It was supposed to be a peaceful Christmas. Our first one in the new house. I'd spent weeks decorating it. Twinkling lights along the porch, a real pine tree Ethan and I picked out together, the smell of cinnamon rolls warming the kitchen. I thought this was going to be the beginning of something new. Something safe. Then my father cornered me in the kitchen with a glass of eggnog and a voice that dropped lower than the carols humming from the living room. "Add your brother to the mortgage," he said flatly. No hello. No Merry Christmas. Just that. I blinked, thinking I must have misheard him. "What?" I asked, laughing nervously. He leaned in, reeking of cologne and whatever whiskey he'd poured too early in the afternoon. "Connor doesn't have a place right now. It's just a name, Avery. Just add him to the mortgage so he can get back on his feet." I stood there, spatula in hand, like an idiot. "But he's not buying the house. Ethan and I. You think you're better than your family now?" he snapped, voice still low but venomous. "Too good to help your own brother?" "I didn't say that. This isn't just my decision. Ethan, you're telling me that boy makes decisions for you now? He's my husband, Dad. We bought the house together. We signed the mortgage together. You know that." His eyes narrowed like I just spit in his drink. "So what? Connor's not your family anymore? After everything we've done for you?" I tried to keep my voice calm. "I'll talk to Ethan. That's all I can promise." He scoffed and walked out of the kitchen, leaving behind a trail of resentment so thick I could smell it on the mashed potatoes. I should have said no then and there. Later that night, after dinner, while people lingered around the tree and my nieces unwrapped early presents, I pulled Ethan aside into the guest bedroom. He already looked tense, like he'd felt the shift in the air. I told him what Dad had asked. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He never did. He just looked at me with tired eyes and said, "No. Absolutely not. We don't have to give Connor money. They just want his name on the mortgage." "And what does that get them?" Ethan asked. "Control? A claim to something they didn't build?" He wasn't wrong. Connor didn't have a job. He'd crashed 2 cars in the past year. He owed money to a dozen people and couldn't even hold down a weekend shift at a gas station. My parents had always cleaned up his messes, and now they expected me to do the same. Still, I felt torn. "They'll be furious." Ethan shrugged. "Let them be." But I was still naive. I thought it would be a cold shoulder, maybe a few passive-aggressive texts. I didn't think it would come to violence. I told my father the next morning. We were in the backyard, away from the others. I thought he'd at least pretend to be civil, given the occasion. I was wrong. His face darkened immediately. "So he said no, and you just obeyed?" "I didn't obey anyone. We decided together. Don't give me that wee crap. You're still my daughter. And this is my life." I snapped. "Connor is not part of our mortgage. Period." Then he did something I'll never forget. He stormed back inside like a man possessed, pushed past my sister and her husband, and marched straight up to Ethan, who was holding a mug of cocoa and talking to my uncle. Without a word, my dad lunged at him. It happened so fast, I barely processed it. One moment Ethan was laughing about something mundane, and the next my father had shoved him, hard, his voice booming. "You think you're too good for this family, huh?" The entire room fell silent. Ethan didn't fight back. He caught himself against the edge of the counter, standing his ground but refusing to retaliate. I ran to him, yelling, pushing between them, my hands shaking. My mother screamed. Connor stood in the corner and didn't say a damn word. "Get out," I told my father. "Leave." He glared at me like I'd betrayed him. "You'll regret this. You're still part of this family whether you like it or not." "No," I said. My voice was cold. Final. "Not anymore." He left, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell off the hallway wall. That was the moment everything snapped into place for me. This wasn't about helping Connor. It was about control. About ownership. About proving that no matter what I built, they'd always tried to own a piece of it. And I realized then, I wasn't going to let them. Not anymore. After that Christmas incident, everything shifted. It was like a switch had been flipped in my parents' heads. I used to think there was still some unspoken love under all the dysfunction, that maybe deep down they respected the life Ethan and I were building. But after we said no to putting Connor on the mortgage, and especially after the scene my father caused, I saw the truth. They weren't angry because we refused. They were angry because they couldn't control us anymore. At first, it was subtle. A few cold shoulders, some passive-aggressive comments in the family group chat. My mom texted me 3 days after the blow-up. "Hope you and Ethan are enjoying your perfect little life. Some of us are struggling." I ignored it. Ethan and I agreed we wouldn't engage, at least not until they calmed down. But they didn't calm down. They escalated. 2 weeks after Christmas, my brother Connor called me. I hadn't spoken to him since the incident, and honestly, I didn't want to. But curiosity, and maybe a little guilt, got the better of me. He opened with the fakest warmth I'd ever heard. "Hey sis, how's the new house?" "Fine," I said. "What's going on?" "Well," he said, drawing it out. "Mom and Dad were talking, and look, I know things got a little heated, but they just want to help. They were thinking maybe we could do a formal agreement, something where I get added to the mortgage, but only on paper. I wouldn't even move in or anything." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "Do you even hear yourself? What's the big deal?" he whined. "You and Ethan have more than enough. I'm your brother. Don't you think I deserve a chance too?" "Deserve?" I repeated. "You've never worked for anything. You crashed 2 cars, lied about having a job, and now you want a piece of the only thing I actually earned? That's harsh." "No, Connor. What's harsh is watching our parents bend over backwards for you your whole life while I had to claw my way to everything." He hung up on me. A week later, my mom posted a status on Facebook. It was vague but pointed. "It's sad when your own child forgets where they came from. We raised her, gave her everything, and now she turns her back when her family needs her most." I didn't respond. But people in the comments knew exactly who it was about. Maya tagged me. My cousin messaged me privately and asked, "What's going on?" At that point, Ethan suggested we start documenting everything. "This isn't just petty family drama anymore," he said. "They're pushing for something." I didn't want to believe it. But he was right. A few days later, we received a letter in the mail, handwritten and oddly formal. It was from my father. In it, he claimed that Ethan and I had verbally agreed to let Connor live in the house and be listed on the mortgage. He demanded a written confirmation and threatened to explore legal options if we didn't comply. I stared at the letter in disbelief. Ethan took photos and filed it immediately. "They're trying to set up a paper trail," he said. "It's bogus, but if they push this in court, it could become a nightmare." Then came the kicker, a lawyer's letter. Not a real one, some fake, legal representative, with no valid license number, just a Gmail address and a barely there header. But the letter accused us of fraudulent misrepresentation and demanded we honor the family agreement. It was absurd, borderline comedic, except for the fact that I knew my parents thought they were playing a real game. I started digging. I called an actual attorney and explained the situation. She was calm, professional, but also blunt. "Family disputes like this can get very ugly, especially when property is involved." "Can they actually do anything?" I asked. "Not unless you've signed something. But if they're lying or fabricating documents, that's a whole different matter." I had never felt so betrayed. I thought maybe they'd lash out emotionally, maybe give us the silent treatment. But what they were doing now, it was calculated. One night, while going through some old emails, I found something strange. A bank statement in my name from a credit union I didn't recognize. I dug deeper. Apparently my name, and Connor's, had been attached to a loan application for a car. A car I had never seen. I confronted Ethan first. "Did you ever co-sign anything with them? Did they somehow use your info?" "No," he said. "Why?" "Because apparently I co-signed a car loan. With Connor." It didn't make sense. I'd never agreed to anything like that. I called the credit union the next morning, and after being passed between departments and verifying my identity, I got the truth. The application had been submitted using my old address, my parents' house, and an old phone number. The signature on file? Not mine. It was forged. I was shaking when I hung up. The credit union said they would flag the account for fraud, but the damage had been done. My own family had committed identity fraud against me. That's when everything inside me went cold. I wasn't dealing with parents anymore. I was dealing with people who saw me as an asset. A tool. A means to an end. Ethan held my hand while I cried that night. Not sobs, just quiet, exhausted tears. I wasn't sad anymore. I was done. "They want a war," he said gently. "So we give them one. On our terms." From that moment on, we started building our case. Ethan compiled every message, every social media post, every voicemail. I gathered old documents, scanned signatures, bank statements. We even found an old text from my dad bragging to his brother about getting Connor on the deed eventually. We weren't going to let them win. Not just because it was our house, but because we needed to protect ourselves from people who were supposed to protect us. Still, it hurt. I remembered growing up in that house, watching my dad grill steaks in the backyard, listening to my mom hum while folding laundry, getting blamed every time Connor messed up because, "You're older, you should know better." I had forgiven so much for the sake of keeping the family together. But they'd never done the same for me. It wasn't about a mortgage. It was about power. About punishing me for being the one who got out. A few days later, I got another message from my mom. "I don't know why you're doing this. We're just trying to look out for Connor." I didn't reply. But I wanted to scream, "You never looked out for me." In fact, I could count the number of times they'd helped me on one hand. They didn't attend my college graduation because it was too far. They didn't come to our wedding because it was too expensive. But now that I had something they wanted, something tangible, they suddenly remembered I existed. They were trying to rewrite our history. And they didn't realize I had receipts. Ethan and I met with a real estate attorney. We made sure everything about our property was airtight. Title documents, ownership records, payment history. The house was ours, completely. No loopholes. No technicalities. We even added a clause to our property agreement that no third party could make claims without a notarized, signed agreement, something my parents definitely didn't have. We also filed a fraud report against the forged car loan. I gave the credit union a sworn statement and reported it to the local police, who opened an investigation. I didn't expect much to come of it, but at least it was on record. And finally, we sent a cease and desist letter to my parents and Connor, demanding they stop all forms of harassment, public defamation, and fraudulent claims. I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. The night before we sent the letter, I got a call from my mom. She was crying. "I don't know what's happening to this family," she sobbed. "You've become so cold." "No," I said, voice steady. "You push me away. You picked Connor every time. And now that I'm not giving you what you want, you're shocked that I'm protecting myself. You don't understand," she said. "Your father is under so much pressure. We just wanted Connor to have a future. So you tried to steal mine?" I asked. She hung up. And just like that, I knew this was the final break. There was no going back. The moment I dropped the cease and desist letters in the mailbox, a strange calm washed over me. Not peace, exactly, but clarity. I had spent so much of my life tiptoeing around my parents' moods, bending to their guilt trips, patching up Connor's chaos, and trying to be the bridge between logic and dysfunction. But now, for the first time, I had chosen myself. And I wasn't done. The law firm Ethan connected me with specialized in family-related property disputes. They'd seen every kind of mess, estranged parents trying to lay claim on assets, siblings squabbling over inheritances, even forged wills. So our story? Unfortunately, it wasn't rare. But that meant they knew exactly what to do. The first thing our lawyer, Marlene, asked was simple. "What outcome do you want?" "Freedom," I said. "And for them to know they can't bully me anymore." She smiled. "Then let's make it hurt, in a way they'll never forget." And so we built a strategy. We discovered something Ethan and I had never paid much attention to before, the lease agreement on my parents' apartment. It was under my name. Years ago, when they'd been at risk of eviction, Connor having defaulted on a loan and my dad tanking his credit, I'd stepped in to sign the lease for them. At the time, I thought I was helping. I was 25, newly promoted, optimistic. I told myself it was temporary. They just needed a little time. But 5 years had passed, and I was still the legal tenant. They'd never even offered to take over the lease. And more importantly, they had stopped paying rent 6 months ago. I hadn't noticed because I had their payments on autopay through a separate account I barely monitored, one I had set up when I thought family comes first was a virtue, not a trap. When I told Ethan, he blinked twice, then started laughing. "You're kidding. You're literally still paying for their roof?" "Not anymore," I said. "We're flipping the script." Marlene confirmed it. Not only had they defaulted on the lease, but since I was the named tenant, I had the full legal right to terminate it. And if I could prove they were living there without authorization and without payment, I could formally file for eviction. Still, part of me hesitated. Not because they didn't deserve it, but because there was a child inside me still waiting for her parents to act like parents. To say sorry. To mean it. But then I remembered the forged car loan. The fake lawyer. My father shoving Ethan. And my mother pretending none of it was their fault. No. They weren't going to learn through conversation. They were going to learn through consequence. So I planned a dinner. I sent a text to my mother first. Simple, emotionless. "Would you and Dad be willing to come over for dinner? I'd like to talk." The reply came within an hour. "Yes. That would be nice. Should we bring dessert?" Ethan looked at me when I read it aloud. "They think you're surrendering." "Let them," I said. We prepared everything like it was a normal evening. I made lasagna, bought wine, even lit candles. Ethan was quiet as he set the table, but his eyes never left me. He knew I wasn't second-guessing myself, just bracing for the weight of what was coming. They arrived 20 minutes late, of course. My father didn't even knock, just pushed the door open like he still owned every room he walked into. My mother trailed behind, holding a plastic tray of store-bought cookies like a peace offering soaked in sugar. "Avery," she said, giving me a quick hug. "Smells nice in here." My father didn't say anything. Just gave Ethan a tight nod and walked straight into the dining room like it was his. We sat. Ate. Talked. I let them ramble. My mom talked about how hard things had been lately, how rent was getting expensive, how Connor was still trying to get his life together. My dad didn't mention the incident with Ethan at all, as if ignoring it made it disappear. He just sipped wine and stared at the walls, eyes drifting to the family photos on our mantel. Eventually, I cleared my throat. "I've been thinking about everything," I began. "About the house. About Connor. About family." My mom leaned forward eagerly. "And? I want to make peace," I said. "Maybe there's a way we can share things. Make sure everyone's taken care of." My father's eyes lit up, just barely. But it was there. The smug little twitch at the corner of his mouth. That look I'd seen my whole life when he thought he'd gotten his way. I continued. "So I'm willing to look into some options. Maybe adding Connor to certain assets." Ethan shifted in his seat, playing his role perfectly, pretending to tense like this wasn't part of the plan. My mother nodded quickly. "That would mean a lot to us. We don't want to fight." "Of course," I said. "Neither do I." We ended dinner on smiles. Polite ones, but real enough to pass. They left with their tray of uneaten cookies and a spark of victory in their eyes. And the next morning, I filed the eviction paperwork. It felt cold. Clinical. But not wrong. Legally, I gave them 30 days notice. I also froze the payment account and notified the leasing office that I was withdrawing as guarantor and tenant. Marlene ensured that everything was airtight, documented, notarized, undeniable. 7 days later, they received the letter. I didn't send it through a lawyer. I delivered it myself. I waited until 9 a.m. when I knew they'd be home. I parked across the street and walked up to the apartment, my name still listed on the buzzer. My mother opened the door, dressed in a robe and holding a mug of coffee. She blinked. "Avery?" I handed her the envelope. "It's a notice. You have 30 days to vacate. Non-payment. Lease violation. I'm no longer responsible for this apartment." Her mouth opened and closed. "But we had dinner. You said." "I said what you needed to hear," I replied. "Now I'm saying what's real." She stared at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. "You're evicting us? I'm removing myself from your mess. If you'd rather see that as eviction, that's up to you." Behind her, I saw my father standing, arms crossed, silent. For once, he had no quip. No threat. No raised voice. Just a man being confronted with the cost of his own choices. "You think this is over?" he finally said. "You think you've won?" I looked him straight in the eye. "No. I think I stopped losing." And then I walked away. The following weeks were chaos, from their end, at least. They called, they messaged, they sent letters. Some angry, some pathetic. My mom begged. My dad threatened. Connor even tried to show up at my work once. Security turned him away. Ethan and I never engaged. We had everything documented, and we had protection in place. Restraining orders if needed. Police reports. Legal records. We watched from a distance as their world crumbled. Turns out, without the apartment and without my financial lifeline, their debt caught up fast. They had no savings, and the few friends who used to lend a hand disappeared once the money stopped. I heard through a mutual friend, one of my cousins, who still talks to me privately, that they moved into a beat-up old van Connor had bought with a payday loan. No electricity. No bathroom. No heat. A week after their eviction, Ethan and I opened a bottle of wine on our patio. The night was quiet. Peaceful. Our home, untouched by anyone else's name or chaos. "To clarity," Ethan said, raising his glass. "To consequence," I replied. And as we clinked our glasses together under the soft glow of the porch light, I realized something. I didn't feel guilty. Not one bit. Because letting people manipulate you under the guise of family isn't loyalty. It's self-destruction. And I was done being the one who paid the price. It's strange how silence can be so loud once the noise is gone. For months, my life had been a constant hum of anxiety. Texts from my mother, Facebook rants, forged paperwork, Ethan checking cameras every night like we lived in a war zone. But after the eviction was processed, and 30 days passed without incident, our home became still again. Really still. Not temporary quiet, not tension hiding in the corners, quiet. Just peace. That first morning after the move-out deadline, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, walked barefoot onto our porch, and took in the cold, crisp air. The grass was wet with dew, the mail untouched, and the driveway empty. No surprise visits, no Connor's clunky sedan idling outside like a threat. They were gone. It was done. And yet, even in the quiet, I didn't feel celebratory. I felt reflective. Maybe a little numb. I didn't hear much from them for a while. There were a few final messages, half-hearted accusations about how I was turning my back on family and destroying blood ties for money. But they fizzled out when I never responded. That silence was the truest closure I could have asked for. But then, about 6 weeks after the eviction, I ran into my cousin Janelle at a grocery store across town. We weren't close, but we weren't on bad terms either. She recognized me first, waved me down between the cereal aisle and the frozen food section. "Hey, Avery," she said cautiously. "Hey," I replied, equally cautious. We exchanged a few polite nothings. Then she said it. "I heard about your folks. About everything." I didn't respond, just looked at her, waiting to see which direction she'd take it. She sighed. "Look, I'm not here to take sides. But you should know, they're living in a car now. An old one Connor borrowed from a friend. They've been parking behind a gas station off Route 7. I blinked. "Seriously?" "Yeah." I didn't believe it either. But I saw them. My mom gave them a blanket and a box of food last week. They didn't even want to talk. I didn't know what to feel. Pity? Triumph? Closure? They said they were just waiting for a check to clear, but it's been over a month. No one's helping anymore. Not after all that drama. I nodded slowly. "Thanks for telling me." She paused. "Are you okay?" I looked her in the eye and told the truth. "Yeah. For the first time in a long time, I am." That night, I didn't tell Ethan about the grocery store run-in. Not because I was hiding it, just because I wanted to sit with it for a while. I made dinner, we watched a movie, and when he finally went to bed early, I stayed up and poured myself a glass of wine. I stood in the doorway to our kitchen, looking at everything they had once tried to claim. The hallway with the crooked family photo. The scuffed baseboards from our rushed move-in. The kitchen island we couldn't afford at first but worked overtime to pay off. Every inch of this house was earned. And now, finally, it was ours alone. I carried my glass out to the porch again, wrapped in a thick blanket, and looked up at the stars. The kind of night sky you can only see when there's no one left to cast a shadow over it. I thought about Connor. About how he used to joke that I was too uptight for making Excel budgets in college, while he bought sneakers he couldn't afford. I thought about my dad, standing tall and smug at my wedding, pretending like he was proud while secretly planning how to pull me back into his orbit. I thought about my mother, who always sighed like love was a transaction and I never paid enough. And then I thought about that car, the one they were now crammed inside of, sleeping upright, probably blaming everyone but themselves. It would have broken me, once. The idea of them suffering. But not anymore. Because I had suffered too. Quietly. Repeatedly. I had handed over years of support, money, patience, boundaries. I'd tried every version of the peacemaker, the bridge builder, the responsible one. And they burned all of it for control. That night, sipping Cabernet and staring into the kind of stillness I'd only dreamed of, I realized something simple. It's not cruel to protect your peace. It's survival. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. I recognized the shaky cursive even before I opened it, my mother's. She didn't say much. Just a few lines. "I don't expect you to forgive us. I don't know what we were thinking. Maybe we weren't thinking at all. Connor's still blaming everyone but himself. Your father's too proud to speak. But I see now what we lost. And I'm sorry." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. Forgiveness isn't always a door you open. Sometimes it's just a wall you stop banging your head against. Ethan came home from work that evening, kissed me on the forehead, and asked what I was thinking about. I smiled and told him. Nothing important. Because it wasn't. Not anymore. We ate dinner, lit a fire, and when I raised my glass that night, I didn't toast revenge. I toasted freedom. Growing up, we're taught that family is everything. That blood is thicker than water. That no matter how hard things get, you stick together. That loyalty means sacrifice. But no one tells you what to do when the people you're loyal to begin using your love as leverage. No one prepares you for the moment you realize that the people who are supposed to protect you are the very ones you need protection from. This story, my story, is not just about a house, or a mortgage, or a family disagreement gone wrong. It's about the cost of choosing yourself in a world that keeps telling you to choose others first. It's about learning that being the good daughter doesn't mean being the sacrificial lamb. And that setting boundaries isn't a betrayal, it's the only way to stay whole. For so long, I believed that keeping my family close meant enduring their dysfunction. That love meant tolerance, even if it hurt. That keeping the peace meant staying silent when things felt wrong. So I gave and gave, time, money, patience, space. I paid rent for people who never said thank you. I stayed quiet when they humiliated my husband. I swallowed my anger when they forged documents, spread lies, and demanded what was never theirs. Why? Because they were my family. But here's what I've learned: family isn't defined by DNA. It's defined by respect. If someone lies to you, manipulates you, threatens you, or harms the person you love, calling them family doesn't make it okay. It doesn't give them a free pass to trample your boundaries or invade your life with demands master's needs. The truth is, love without respect is not love. It's control. I used to think that walking away from my parents made me cold. That protecting myself made me selfish. That saying no made me ungrateful. But the older I get, the more I understand this: self-preservation is not cruelty. It is wisdom. We teach people how to treat us. And for years I taught my family that I was the one who could be pushed the furthest, who would always clean up the mess, who would stay no matter how much it hurt. And they believed me. Until I stopped believing it myself. There's a unique grief that comes with cutting ties with people who are still alive. With saying goodbye to the idea of what they could have been, the kind of parents you needed, the kind of brother who didn't drain every room he entered. But that grief is worth facing, because on the other side of it is something far greater: peace. Real peace isn't just the absence of conflict. It's the absence of fear. It's living without the constant worry that someone will guilt you into submission or twist your love into a weapon. It's sitting in your own home, glass of wine in hand, knowing no one is coming to take what you've built. And peace, I've learned, is the greatest revenge. To anyone reading this who feels torn between protecting themselves and honoring the people who raised them, I see you. I know that guilt runs deep. That the voice in your head says, "But what if they change? But what if I'm overreacting? But they're still my family." Let me tell you this: you are allowed to demand better, even from the people who raised you. You are allowed to redefine what family means. And you are allowed, no, obligated, to protect your joy. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because you share a last name. You don't owe anyone your silence when they're hurting you. You don't owe anyone the right to claim pieces of what you've earned through their manipulation or guilt. What you do owe, to yourself, is safety. And peace. And the kind of life that doesn't involve constant damage control. There will always be people who don't understand your boundaries. That's okay. They don't need to understand them. They just need to respect them. And if they can't, then those people don't deserve a seat at your table, no matter what role they've played in your past. Healing sometimes looks like closing the door and locking it behind you. Sometimes it looks like serving eviction papers and sipping wine on your porch while the stars come out. And sometimes it looks like waking up one morning, breathing in the silence, and realizing you're finally free. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter. I don't replay the arguments or fantasize about revenge. I don't waste energy hoping they'll apologize. Because I don't need them to be sorry for me to be at peace. I just need to keep choosing myself. And I will. Every day.